Welcome back to Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and Pete Sampson of The Athletic. Three of us are rolling old school, kind of like, I don't know, what do you guys say? Would we be NWA or more like Sugar Hill Gang, something along those lines? But yeah, three-man crew today. And we actually did have a couple of commitments after our recruiting heavy Monday podcast. Offensive lineman Charlie Tom makes six. Long snapper Sean Kraft makes one for 2027. And we have three wide receivers, I believe, coming up with decisions, not this weekend, but on the holiday weekend. And Tim, I know you did a film review on Tom, and we touched briefly on why they wanted six in our last podcast, but I think that's worth reiterating.
Yeah, I mean, as I looked at it more closely today, Tim, and I did my Thursday thoughts. All 16 offensive linemen on scholarship this fall will have eligibility beyond this year, and then you'll have six more coming in next year. Obviously, they won't have 22 offensive linemen on the roster, but to speak to what we were talking about on Monday, when you and I heard a question and thought in terms of, okay, which of these guys might fall by the wayside? I think we mentioned four guys. Those guys better pick it up because it's going to be a heavy contingent. But Tom is an interesting prospect. I can't think that I've ever seen anyone quite like him in high school, or at least how he was utilized. His old high school did a great job of moving him around and doing different things with him at tight end. He's agile enough to do some things at tight end, but he projects as a tackle. Some people said, why can't he be a left tackle? Because of all the great left tackle prospects that that
That's
they
good.
that they have on the roster. I mean, Lambert and Black and McKeel coming in and on and on. So yeah, I mean, six. Somebody's going to have to fall by the wayside. He's an interesting athlete. Boy, is a bad week for Penn State recruiting. Every head-to-head battle with Notre Dame went the other way. So continuation of what happened in the Orange Bowl for the Nittany Lions.
I have a couple things. Like one, while you should never trust a man with two first names, I do think with the expanded scholarships and the
And
fact
hard to pronounce last name if it's phonetically. You can't do that
correct.
either. So there's
I think that offensive linemen now we've seen at Notre Dame have the chance to be three and outs, which was never the case 10 years ago. So I think there is sort of a new reality for offensive linemen when you have elite guys, they may leave after 3 years. Like could Charles Jagasa might be an interesting example of that this year. So
Yeah.
the fifth year Mike McGlinchey offensive line story may be rarer moving forward. So I think it pays to get ahead a little bit of it. And this I'll try not to walk over this question, but like if you're recruiting Charlie Tom to be a fourth and fifth year player, but don't really need him in 26, 27, 28, that's fine too. You can have guys on different developmental tracks. So I would, especially in the new 95 scholarship era, if that's kind of what Notre Dame's going for, I would always sign an extra offensive lineman, an extra defensive lineman, an extra defensive back, and an extra wide receiver. So Charlie Tom is your extra offensive lineman.
Good point. And I mean, Billy Schrauth
Yeah.
could leave as well after this year.
yeah, you never used to consider that. Now I actually went back at a poster who was making I in my Monday musings I tried to do look at some key points for trying to go to a national title 24, 25 versus 26. And I ranked 25 as the best offensive line year, assuming people are going to leave because I never would assume that these guys, I would say, like, why would Charles Jagasa go pro as a junior? Billy Schrauth can't go pro yet. But now I think some of those four guys that can leave will have good years and go to the NFL. It's
Yeah.
just the new reality.
As you guys are talking, I'm thinking of other guys that, Emil
Yeah.
Wagner has
I
two
mean,
years
oh
of
yeah, there's four.
eligibility.
Ashton Craig, if he has a great year, he's
Right.
been hurt. Why
Right.
not leave? Why not?
Yeah.
If he's
That
going
that
to
would,
get good
man.
progression.
Yeah, you could lose a pretty good cross section of that group, and that would put a different slant on things, certainly.
Well, I know we haven't looked at much Sean Kraft for the 2027 long snapping, but I did have a quick conversation with Eric on this and made a good point. Because I just did a Joseph Vinci piece where I realized I had never spoken with Joseph Vinci. So I did a lot of research and watched him on a couple of podcasts with his old high school, Tim Priester. That was illuminating. So that's how I got to write about him. He's a big guy. He's 6'4", 230. The first thing they said about him on this podcast from his high school is, we're used to seeing you running down the field and hitting people. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have never known that about him. But Sean Kraft is also 6'4" and already about 215. In other words, Notre Dame has a plan at long snapper, and it is not to have big defensive linemen stepping over their snapper again to block kicks.
Yeah, I mean, we all thought it was unusual when Reno Monteforte won the job, and credit to him. I mean, what a tough little dude.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I mean, but I mean, he had limitations
Yeah,
and
little dude, as you accurately described him.
That was the take.
exactly. And so, give him credit for working as hard as he did and putting himself in
Yeah.
position. Where did he transfer to? I don't even
Cal.
remember.
Oh
He
yeah.
transferred to
California. And
Cal.
actually,
So
and on topic, since we don't talk about long snappers much, Vinci actually said, because Vinci took his job basically in week 8, right? Yeah, week 8, because he's still all he actually redshirted, but played 8 games. Joseph Vinci, as you put in your
that is,
blurb,
yeah,
Priester. Yeah,
that's a modern day play 4 regular season games. He didn't play against Army, obviously on
on
purpose,
purpose, so he could be there for
and
USC. Yeah,
and the 4 playoff games don't count. So he played 8 games. He's still a freshman eligibility wise.
he credited Monteforte in every interview with
Fantastic, great.
I mean, still teaching him when he lost his job to him, which is kind of what you want from your specialists in walk-on crew. This is not this weekend, but I didn't want to leave recruiting on a long snapper note. So next weekend, 4th of July, there should be, I believe, 3 in a row, three, maybe not Notre Dame, but 3 decisions in a row coming from Kadon Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, and Braden Robinson. Obviously, getting 2 of those 3 would be fantastic. Some stuff, I guess Notre Dame trended up a little bit more, Pete, than if we would have done this podcast before their official visit weekend.
Yeah, I would qualify that 2 out of 3 would be fine as long as one was Kadon Finley.
Yeah, that's true
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
2 out of 3 and one was not Kadon Finley. I wouldn't consider that.
I've said it in a previous podcast. I'll take 1 out of 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
the
mean,
one.
yeah, that's the one.
I think we had this conversation about like Tuitt once before. Do you want 3 prospects, or I want Stephon Tuitt?
Right.
You can ask him.
I mean, it goes back to where Charlie Tom, like, if you're going to sign 5 wide receivers in this era, great. I mean, one of these guys is the extra guy. They're all not going to work out. That's how
Right.
the world works. But they can't work out if they're not on your roster to begin with. So get as many on your roster as you can.
So
And
go
yeah,
ahead,
I
Tim.
mean, that's the reality. We've talked about this many times. That's the reality today that, the old, when you get a scholarship from Notre Dame, it's good for 4 years. They can't do that. And you just can't make that promise anymore and still continue to, compete for playoff spots, et cetera. So that's just going to be the reality moving forward, that if you bring in extra guys, so be it. The ones that can't contribute will fall by the wayside, and that's just part of the process now.
I mean, if you sign a group, maybe you sign a group of 3. Well, one of them's Jaden Grayhouse, one of them's Rico Flores, one of them's Braylon James,
Good. Yeah.
and then the
Exactly.
walk on is Jordan Faison. So like I think wide receiver is probably one of the bigger crapshoot positions in terms of who actually works out.
Oh,
So
I definitely agree with you.
yeah, so to have an extra roll of the dice here. I think it makes sense as from a roster management point, especially in 2025, to do that.
I think it used to be. I mean, I know it used to be quarterback was a crapshoot. I think it's gotten better, actually, quarterback identification and recruiting. At least what it was when I did a study like from maybe '08 to 18, where nationally you could just look at the top 10 composite quarterbacks and go hit, miss, 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 transfer, 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 hit. And I don't think it's like that anymore. If we go down, this would be bad radio, but if we go down the list, I bet you'd find more hits in the last 10 years identified there. Wide receivers, man. Maybe it's because we say things like there's 150 DeVaris Daniels. There's also 400 guys that are hot 4 stars that maybe can't play wide receiver at the college level, but they sure are good athletes. I think that it might
Yeah.
work both ways at that position.
When you say bad radio, Tim, is that when everybody takes a shot?
Yeah, it's the one. So
You
I
know,
throw it in there. Yeah. I'm going to work Joe Burrow in for Pete. He's here this week. So
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah, I was going up the 2023 guys going into their junior year of the top 10 quarterbacks. Arch Manning is 1, Nico Amiava 2, Dante Moore 3. I think you'd have to say hit on those guys, even if their paths around have been weird. But then you got Jackson Arnold transferred, Malachi Nelson, huge bust.
yeah.
Jaden Rashada goes without saying. Aiden Childs has been good now at Michigan State from Oregon State.
Hmm.
Austin Mack, I think he's stuck with Washington or maybe transferred out. And then Avery Johnson is good. And then Vizina was number 10, who hasn't really had a shot at Clemson. So 5 out of 10, actually, I would say is probably pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was worse. I'd like to find that old study, but it
Oh,
was,
God, when you go back, there are
Yeah.
some atrocious years where it's like 1 out of 10.
Wow. I wonder if Zeno contemplates his choice of colleges at this point. And that happens
Sure.
to so many kids. And that's why I brought up Vallejo the other day. You think Vallejo is thinking, I wonder if I should have chosen the other one.
Yeah. There's some off the field news brought to us by Football Scoop and a story written by John Bryce. You for the first time in a quarter century, is that right, guys? Dave Poloquin, the current assistant athletics director in charge of strategic initiatives, has taken a new job. He will be joining Athletes First, and he was the better known as the director of player personnel for about 20 years at Notre Dame, director of football development at one point, and of course a Notre Dame grad. And we have worked with Dave Poloquin.
Yeah.
You guys have worked with Dave Poloquin all 25 years, and I've worked with Dave Poloquin all 17 years. So that was always good to see Dave around town, and that was a good for him and a new career move and a new path.
Yeah, a real key behind the scenes guy for Notre Dame that a lot of people on the outside didn't know,
Yeah,
about him. He'll be joining Kyle McCarthy at Athletes First, former Notre Dame player, who's done a really good job for them. Actually, Tim, I wasn't even aware of this announcement.
I found out from Bryce. Yeah,
Oh,
it
okay.
was yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I haven't seen
yeah.
John's story, but yeah, I mean, one of those behind the scenes soldiers that did a great job for Notre Dame that Eric Thomas was at one point when he was a student at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, Dave was here as in a support role when Kyle McCarthy was a player.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, I have not covered Notre Dame football without Dave Poloquin being around.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
which I'm going to my 25th season. And it's like he did everything. Like he was the NIL contact for a while. He was sort of the de facto recruiting coordinator for a
yeah.
while.
Oh yeah,
He was a student manager, and retained by I think five different coaches.
yeah. It was in the story. Five different coaches he worked for. He could have had
So
six if George would have stuck around a little longer.
yeah, it's true. I mean, if you want to count him. So yeah, he's just like a lot of institutional knowledge. I think, regarded as a good guy. I think it's somebody on staff was texting me about him last night, just like, hey, like you don't get this a lot. Like this says something about Poloquin. When somebody on staff texts you is like, hey, could you do something on Poloquin because like he deserves it? Like
Yeah.
guys, like that just doesn't happen very often. So I mean, very very well regarded internally, even if I think people outside the program weren't that familiar with him.
Well, he predated people knowing everybody internally inside the program, which is
Yeah,
the
right.
last 4 years because of general managers and NIL and all that stuff. Like that wasn't you wouldn't be able to name the director or the player development director at Notre Dame other than us and writers that daily beat media writers would be able to name him. Now everybody can name who's the general
Yeah.
manager at Notre Dame, and that person didn't
Well,
do
yeah,
it.
now everybody has an opinion about every support staff person
Yeah,
that's hired. You
how in the world
look
do
at
we
their
know how they're doing?
right, you look at their bio and you don't have a whole lot of information. You just have to trust it. But yeah, I mean everything you guys are saying is correct. And we have in years past, Irish Illustrated has featured Dave Poloquin and good guy, Notre Dame guy, unsung hero along the way for Notre Dame football.
Couple of thoughts before we wrap up segment one. It was National Notre Dame updates its weight day on Monday. Pete, do you have any thoughts on that? Is there anyone out there? Is there an Anthony Vernaglia in this group that you think had the best summer of his life so far?
No, I know people love that Keaton Young is 241 pounds. I'm not sure how many carries Keaton Young will get with Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and Aeneas
Yeah.
Williams. But Bryce Young is huge, as we've talked about many times. So, and Christian Gray is on pace for a unanimous All-American season.
Uh,
Finally,
that was almost the podcast jinx, but we were able to talk about it later. So,
Uh,
for
I mean, do
number,
we get an
now number
NIL cut?
six from
Do
number
Pete and I
29.
get an NIL cut out of this when he's an All-American?
Absolutely.
He's the only guy to ever be named a semifinalist for the Thorpe Award preseason after that number change. Just right away, he's a semifinalist, not even on the watch list.
I loved him in the number 29. I thought he owned it. But six fits him perfectly, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah, 6 for 6. He could have
as
that.
as
That's the new thing.
Yeah.
Good.
I did follow up on your thoughts, Tim, in today's Thursday thoughts, and I thought Malachi Fields would be the two in numbers in the 80s available, or 80 and 83. I thought 80 was, I envisioned him in that number.
Yeah.
He's number 0. Okay,
What
my
do you say
opinion
about number 0, Tim Priester, in the past? What have you said about it?
well, I don't like it. I
It's
would
not a
never
number, is
wear
what you
it.
said.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a number. It's 0. I get what it is, but Some of my, okay, for me, Keedron Young, because he wasn't, what is it, 241? He,
241. Yeah.
he wasn't quite that high in the spring, but it was brought up to me. He was like 236. It's like, is that too much? And I'm like, no, I think it fits him. So I don't think I don't think a whole lot of 241 with him. And somebody is going to have to get those short yardage runs that, I mean, certainly Jeremiah Love's very capable of
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
He proved that. But the short yardage runs that Riley Leonard accounted for, maybe this creates a role for him. I just want to see him at 241. I don't think it's going to look like, oh man, he's carrying too much weight. I thought he looked good at 236 or whatever it was in the spring. Tim, you mentioned, I think a big surprise, Jared Dawson at 288.
Yeah. That one
But
must have been
what are,
intentional on his part, obviously,
yeah.
to drop that
And
weight.
he's a guy that I said that's a two gap interior defensive lineman. So, does that mean he plays strictly three technique? I don't know. I'm just interested in the
Yeah,
combinations.
they might have
Rubio,
him pegged as the perfect guy next to Gabriel Rubio
it,
because Rubio's a big dude, man.
yeah,
That's
Rubio's 322. Heinisch is only 277, but we know he can
it's going
play
to be that way.
well at that weight. Onye's 302, Mookum's 304. We've seen some summer pictures of him, and he looks
Yeah.
frightening. And Elijah Hughes is up to 297. So I'm really interested to see the various combinations that they have on the interior there. I have a lot of thoughts on this for Irish Illustrated subscribers. You can read it in today's Thursday Thoughts.
If this were
And if you're one,
2007, go ahead, Pete.
I was gonna say, if you're wondering what position Tyler Buckner is going to play in the fall, he's
That
number
is mentioned
10,
in the story as well.
not number 26. So I mean, like I was told this like months ago, they was
Yeah.
moving to quarterback.
Wink,
Yeah,
wink.
it makes sense.
He's wearing number 10, but
We're
he's
at number 10, huh?
listed a
Hey,
wide receiver. Wink, wink.
there's
Yeah.
some
I mean,
NIL when he ends up starting against USC, right? There's you go.
Yeah, it's like he's not he's not the next Chris Mitchell.
and nobody's freaking out about Emil Wagner being at 296
I
anymore.
know. I actually took it out of the story, the weight story. I put in parentheses, Emil Wagner is under 300 pounds. Do you care? And I took it out because somebody was like, what does that mean? So with Keto Drunk, you guys are saying, Tim, this is 2007 and the two of you are doing a podcast. He would be the big machacho, right? That would be the
Well,
one.
yeah, no, Charlie Weiss would name him that. Let's just see what these are all just numbers. And as I said in today's story, I mean, we'll go out to the practice field, the little amount that we're going to get to see them in preseason and try to make a really quick assessment
Right.
of how some guys look. My thought going into it is I don't think Keedron Young is going to look like, oh, he's lacking something because he's 241. I think he carries the weight well.
And very quickly, because this is off-season fodder, but Cole Kublik and Greg McElroy named Notre Dame their number one offensive line. I know we have discussed that they are number 1, 2, 3 somewhere along the way, but I think the news was that Texas A&M was listed at number 2 and Miami at number 6.
I'm about to do
I had a feeling you had me
offensive
coming
line.
up on that one, right?
Yeah, and I also mentioned that in today's story as well, that what I see there is 4 halves and 9 halves not. Boise State has very good offensive line then they're fourth. After that, I think there's a significant drop off. Arkansas is pretty good, but they were terrible defending protecting their quarterback. There's some bad offensive lines on Notre Dame's schedule this year.
Pete, you like the Irish offensive line, okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Actually, my other podcast, The Independent, I had McElroy on. We talked for 40 minutes about a bunch of stuff, but we got into Notre Dame's offensive line quite a bit. And I think he was like, he loved Knapp, Craig, and Wagner. And then he was like, and here's where the rich get richer.
Yes.
And then he's like, because their guard play is just like filthy. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's very, very high on that
How
group.
can you afford to lose Coogan, Spindler, and Pendleton? You got the best guard combination in the country.
Well,
Sorry.
and I wouldn't say I'm going to overstate this one, but the guy that is not in the running to start because he got injured is going to impress Greg McElroy when he's on tap next year too, Gerby Lambert, because that's a player right there. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
1. Welcome back, everybody. It's segment two, burning up the boards. We start with a question from a familiar name, Keenan1W. Marcus Freeman has said this is an O-line, D-line driven program. We seem to have the O-line part down to a science and thankfully can avoid paying FCS tackles $1 million a year to help us. The defensive line side of it is always going to be more of a struggle to get to a championship level as a unit. Recent history suggests or seems to indicate that there's no expense spared for us to get a quarterback and as we need. And in our opinion, should defensive tackle, defensive end be second in line to quarterback payments?
If the only issue I have with that, it's logically yes. In terms of what you need to win games, the best ones seem exorbitant and would be in the NFL, where a guy like Riley Leonard has a flaw that will keep him out of the NFL and could very much help your program instead. So it's tough at corner and defensive tackle and defensive end for me because I feel like if you're going to pay $1 million to someone, that guy probably has an option to go make 10 million.
Yeah, or he's just like, I don't know, Tim's favorite Western Michigan transfer, like Braden Fisk from a few years ago. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
would he have helped Notre Dame? Yeah. Is he going to be the difference maker on a national championship level team? I don't think so. Like Jared Verse was on that team too. He is the super exception to this
Mhm.
rule. I think it's just really hard to find those guys. At equally difficult to finding offensive linemen. Notre Dame is fortunate they recruit well enough on the O line that they probably are never going to have to do that. But yeah, it would be it would be great if there was Riley Mills in the portal. There's isn't. That height, weight, size, quickness combination doesn't transfer. It goes pro. So I think it is what it is. I don't think there's a solution other than just recruit better and harder on the defensive line. And then to be fair, they're doing a pretty good job of that this cycle.
What do you think,
Uh,
Tim?
yeah, it's the same for me. Like I'm not devaluing defensive line, quarterback, defensive line, offensive line, cornerback. It's just they're hard. Quarterback out of those is the only portal position I think that is easily identifiable. You know if he's going to be Notre Dame knows if he's going to be a fit, um, and it's probably worth the money because it's also you can't function without one. And quarterbacks going pro, they got to be obviously really good to leave early or make stupid decisions. That also happens too.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's very difficult, as you guys have said, it's very difficult to recruit great defensive tackles out of the transfer portal. I think that, like just about everything Marcus Freeman does, there will be a greater emphasis on defensive tackle recruiting, and they'll do a better job as they move forward in the future. If you got Elijah Golden and Alistair Vallejo in this class, that at least appears on paper moving forward that would solve the issue. Fortunately, Mike Mickens is still on the staff and recruiting cornerbacks. Cornerbacks would, of course, be right up there. Notre Dame doesn't have to go to the portal to get cornerbacks because they do such a tremendous job of recruiting them. But I don't think there's an easy solution at defensive tackle other than do a better job of recruiting them. And I think that that's probably next on the checklist for Marcus Freeman, and will likely accomplish it like he is accomplishing most other things he puts his mind to.
Next question, Tim, you could start off with this one. Evan Martin wants to know the best Notre Dame running back duo of all time, but mostly because could Love and Price become that after this season?
Holy cow. I mean, there were guys named Bettis, Waters, and Culver on the same football team for Lou Holtz in the early 90s that were fantastic. I don't know. You guys, you, Tim, and I think fans are sometimes better, even though I've lived all of this, I think maybe better prepared to come up with these kind of proclamations, but it's a great one. Let's see. Okay, first of all, Jadarian Price has to be more consistent in short yardage situations and can't get as many. Well, Melly's going to be charting the stuffs this year
Here I
again.
am.
And
Don't
so,
don't let it happen to your pitter patter little feet, to quote
yeah.
Dylan McCullough.
So, however many times he gets stuffed, O'Malley's going to have the running total from week to week. So I think, for us to talk about that, he has to take the next step up. Obviously, they both have to stay healthy. I'm not really sure how Jeremiah Loves improves,
Right.
other than maybe Mike Denbrock gets in the football in space a little bit more in the passing game. I don't know, but look, there was a time when Lou Holtz was recruiting running backs where they had, they had all American level running backs that didn't get all American recognition because you had to split those carries up, and the
Yeah.
other ones went to the secondary and became all Americans there.
So I kind of took it as, can they perform as the best? Because like the best I saw, two guys that actually performed would be Bettis and Brooks, Reggie Brooks and Bettis that year in
And I didn't
92.
even mention,
Because I always look at the backfield of 1990 that you were kind of referencing. They had six deep, but like there wasn't a duo that emerged because he just brought in a bevy of backs, including Rocket, you know? So you're getting Dorsey Levens to transfer because you brought in Jerome Bettis, the freshman. You have Culver and Brooks is at corner and Clark's at corner. Like you're never going to get that again, but the two guys could. I mean, I think Bettis and Brooks are the standard for 1 year. Price and Love could come close to that. That they were pretty. I mean, Bettis and Brooks were.
yeah,
Remember,
Aeneas
Bettis was
Williams may.
Bettis was awesome, and Brooks was better that year. Bettis might have made Brooks better, but you count what happens on the field, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will defer to the 1990s, early 90s as
Yeah.
the best of all time, and I think Jeremiah Love is great, and Jadarian Price is really good. One guy is in the NFL Hall of Fame, the other one has 10,000 yards
Yeah.
rushing in the NFL. So
Willie Clark's going to the NFL as a DB, and
Yeah. He played
you
running
know,
back. They had to move him around a little bit. So yeah, it's tough. But there's another question about Jeremiah Love being a generational talent. Yeah, I think he is, actually. From CMU Pens fan, you've all said Marcus Freeman would need time as a coach to settle in, and it has now shown itself to be a positive. When in the past did you realize that it was not going to work for Davey Willingham and Weiss, and when it would work for Brian Kelly? I wanted to have Pete and Tim on this podcast for this one for sure, because you guys, at some point, covering those people, thought to yourself, that's a problem.
start us out here, Pete.
well, I would only covered the last year of Bob Davies, so it's pretty obvious.
You were able to discern at that moment.
Yeah, it's like even 23-year-old Pete Sampson was like, I don't think this is how this is supposed to go. I heard Notre Dame football is good when I took this job. Um, Willingham, I think even at the end of the first year, you're kind of like, this doesn't feel right. Um, Weiss, the end of the third, and Weiss is tough because even at the end of the third year, like,
Right.
okay, recruiting's coming in, Clausen's here. I think I probably was uh somewhere year four. I don't know
Yeah.
what game had happened, but I sort of like excused year three. But like at the end of year four, you're just like, this is not going to work out. So was that the Syracuse year in year four?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but it didn't go beyond that. So that, and then when would it work for Kelly? If someone probably asked this question at the end of 2012, it'd be like, well, 2012. And there were some ups and downs after that, but more up. So I I think probably, if I'm being honest, like it didn't go beyond year three. You're like, okay, this is happening for this guy. Not that it happened exactly as I would have thought from there, but yeah, I would say year three for Brian Kelly, if you want to put it down to a single game, probably Oklahoma.
Mm.
Maybe Pittsburgh 2 weeks later.
Yeah, that's how it
But
works.
that combination of games, I thought probably kind of told the tale on that.
The 7-day season, as Tim Priester says, right there, Oklahoma and
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
I mean, Davies 5 years were bad, good, bad, good, bad in that order. And so,
That's tough. That's a
right. I mean, you
yeah.
don't want to start out bad, whereas Willingham had a good year and Weiss had 2 good years. I didn't necessarily feel the way you did, Pete, about Willingham's first year because I mean, obviously the offense was lacking, but the defense was really good. I've always been a proponent of Kent Bear and his 2002 defense. I thought it was outstanding, and I thought they could maintain that and then build the offense up. But I think we quickly found I thought Tyrone Willingham was a guy that would have offensive answers, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He was never
Yeah.
a coordinator, and I think that showed.
You're right. And
Uh,
like I should have meant it because like for the same reason I thought Weiss was gonna maybe still make it after 27. Willingham's 2003 class was the class
that had all those
Like,
guys.
okay, this is good. I think it
Yeah.
was when the 2004 class was being assembled, and you're like, ugh. Yeah, so maybe amend that answer. I think it was
Yeah.
probably well into 2003 before you're like, maybe this isn't going to work.
And Weiss's third year was, it was just so, I mean, that team was dreadful.
They
They
were
were,
they were so bad. The
they
people
were
trying to
awful,
compare
but
16 to that team are not even in the realm. You
no,
did not watch '07 if that's what you're trying to do.
the 16 team they lost close games.
Yeah,
The '07 team
they
was
weren't
getting,
good, but
they were getting,
they were
yeah,
important.
no,
Yeah,
you're right. You're right. They weren't good, but at least they were competing. Weiss's third team didn't compete. Davey, I mean, I like Bob. I considered him kind of, a friend when he was defensive coordinator. Then he became head coach, and I just thought I mean, I've said this before. There were too many reasons why he couldn't succeed. I thought he leaned on those
Just
according to
ask
him.
him.
According to him, yes,
according
yes,
to
yes.
him, and I just thought that, man, if that's your mindset, it's going to be difficult for you to be successful, and that proved to be true. Brian
You know, my
Kelly. I mean, I think when you lose to South Florida in the first game of year two.
and they really blew the Michigan game too.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right. And what, there were 10 losses after two, so I mean, once they competed for the national title in 2012, well, then you think, okay, well, it's happening. It was the whole, third year of the Notre Dame coach, and he didn't win the national title, but he played in it. And so, but I will always be a defender of Brian Kelly to the extent that he had three undefeated seasons in 12 years at just regular seasons.
mhm.
That just doesn't happen a lot at Notre Dame. Hell, I mean, Nick Saban won national titles and usually he lost a game during that year. And Brian Kelly went undefeated three times. But I understand all the shortcomings and not winning the big games and not winning against ranked teams. I get all that. But I think after 2012, you felt like, okay, well, this veteran coach is going to get it and it'll start to kick
I
in.
was still worried about Kelly after the last time they lost to USC at home, the face plant in the 2011 game. I was like,
That was
this was a
bad.
horrible effort by a Notre Dame
Yeah.
football program. And that week is when he had the epic, and the last time we ever gathered around Brian Kelly on a
Oh,
Thursday night, when he said, you can see the guys that I recruited here. And
Ooh,
I was like, oh, ho, 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 ho.
that's one
I
of
guess
those
we're
where
working
you're,
you have a
tonight,
follow
guys,
up,
not just
Priester?
transcribing.
Priester, do you have a follow up on that question?
I think I did. That's where like
Yeah.
you're stuffing the word, trying to stuff the words back into his mouth.
Yeah.
Like when Marcus Freeman said, "I don't even know who we play next after they beat Texas
That
A&M."
was the other one.
Oh no! Don't say that.
Yeah.
Question from where are we, Tim? Uh,
We're at PD Halls. Often recruiting comes to closing your top targets and hopefully moving on to the NFL. As O'Malley says, if you're here for 3 years, that means they're really good. I do like to say that. I think a lot of people say that, though. With roster management being so complicated in 2025, do you think the staff purposely supplements the bottom of the class with projects that could be fourth and fifth year studs? And Pete, why don't you start us off because you avoided walking over this one in segment
Yeah.
one.
No, I mean, I think that Brian Kelly's staff did this. And I understand the roster being, they say, so complicated in 2025. Like, I think it's actually maybe a little easier because the scholarship limits are not there. You can make the portal work for you. You may lose guys at the back of your roster, but Notre Dame seems to somehow not do that. Yeah, I think that getting guys on different developmental tracks is fine. Like, Preston Frizel, the tight end who committed the other week, is going to be on a different track probably than James Flanagan. Or if they got like Evan Premer, he'd be on a different track than him. So that's that's fine. Charlie Tom, different track than Will Black. That's fine. I think it makes sense to have guys in different. I think the way what Lauren Landau is like your training age, maybe I think is the term he uses a little bit.
Oh, it's an
Yeah,
interesting term. Yeah.
yeah, develop. So like everyone's kind of on a different developmental arc. So I don't think expecting every lineman you sign in 2026 to look the same or develop at the same rate by 2029 is sort of how they don't look at it that way. They do take guys on different developmental timelines.
I definitely think, especially as it pertains to Marcus Freeman being the head coach, I think he recruits with culture in mind. I think any head coach at Notre Dame needs to be cognizant of that you have to have cultural fits. Would every head coach like to get 4 and 5-star guys. I mean, I think on the surface they would say that, but I think the reality is that you know that you need complementary pieces to the class. And when a guy like Charlie Tom comes along, it's like, that's interesting. There's some different things that we can do with him. It's kind of like Mitchell Evans. He's predominantly a quarterback in high
Right.
school, and you see this big, great athlete and becomes an excellent tight end. So I don't know if they necessarily go into this with a premeditated notion that, okay, well, we're gonna get guys that are 3 stars that can develop
Yeah.
over time. I'm not sure if they look at it like that per se, but I think, as I said to begin this, from a cultural standpoint, I think Marcus Freeman's very cognizant of that.
And I think that it's not the 3-star part. It's like this guy is long or this guy
Yes,
has.
that's
Right. No,
They
that's
that's
got
what
good
I
to
was
have
point.
going to say.
some weird trait where you're just like, ooh, like
I think they recruit to
that
traits.
linebacker from Alabama that we signed in 2001. Like, man, he's really lanky, but maybe he could grow into defensive end. And voila, it's Justin Tuck. Like, there's got to be something developmental. Like, if they took a 3-star offensive lineman who was 6'2.5", I'd be like, well, that was a mistake because
Right, right.
that's a guy that is going to be playing in the MAC.
You're recruiting to type and trait with a long arm corner, Leonard Moore. It's easy to use
Right.
this example now, but you didn't recruit the next Jaden Mickey there. You recruited someone that you thought could develop into something special.
100%.
Yeah, I think, and I hope that Bruce Heggie doesn't listen to these podcasts and hears this, but I mean, that was a different time when Brian Kelly was just really just trying to fill out the numbers. A
Yeah.
guy like that wouldn't be a guy like
Yeah,
that wouldn't fit
I
for
never
Notre
liked
Dame
that
now.
one for Heggie because he was clearly brought on to be a practice player on both offense and defense because he could do both and he never thought he had to play. It was like you do need one of those guys when you're rebuilding an entire roster. Marcus Freeman doesn't need one of those guys right
No,
now.
absolutely
But
not.
that point of that was actually he was more valuable than some guys that left after 1 year. Hopefully Spencer Boyd doesn't listen to this, but there's one right there that you could just think of right away. Pete, I thought you were going to mention Jonathan Williams when you're trying to recruit an
No,
athlete. But
no, I'm
go,
done mentioning
go ahead.
him.
But no, I
Whew.
think it's worth noting that, yeah, Priester, obviously, he would take 4 stars with great character and traits as well. So the
Right.
star is not quite as important.
All right, we have this question for Pete from Maltese Irish. Love the stories and answers to my visit went great. They're definitely in the running recruiting visit question on Monday's pod. Would love to get Pete's response to that.
So
The visits all went great, Pete.
they love it's like a family atmosphere.
With that,
I could not find this guy's name. However, I know for sure he was a defensive end from Florida. I think he signed with Alabama. I was going through their commit list. I couldn't find him, so maybe he signed with Florida or something. But I remember him coming up for Irish Invasion, and his post-visit interview was like, there was no competition there. Like nothing. No competition. And he just like he was so dismissive of like and I'm not saying that he was wrong, but like he was so dismissive of Kelly era defensive line at that point that he was like offended that they would think that he would want to go there. It was
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, I think Mal, you mentioned T. Shepard. He would be very high on my list too.
and you don't remember who your host was or where you went. I could see not knowing where you went. When you don't remember your host's name or what position he played, you might not be the perfect fit for that situation. From Judge Arthur Vandelay, with nickel being the base, how do you see Chris Ash and Max Bulla allocating snaps among the 4 linebackers for the 2 spots on the field? It's probably 2.5 spots on the field, but Al Golden and Bulla did an incredible job last year of allocating snaps evenly among the group. Do you see the staff continuing with the same approach in 25?
I would imagine they would. I mean, Max Bola we've talked about that, Tim. I don't know if you have the snap counts available, but the linebackers that were so close to one another, that can't happen by coincidence. That's a
No, no.
concerted effort to make sure that you're playing all your players, and you're not just playing guys to play them. It's guys that that can be effective. So I mean, I would imagine they would continue to do something like that. I think that Jalen Sneed's a kid that if he could ever fully lock into what his capabilities are, we might see a significant jump up in snaps for him just because he can alter the outcome of game positively in so many ways, generally off the edge, or rushing Drew Eller with the game on the line late in the Orange Bowl. He was the guy that put pressure on the Christian Gray
Yes.
interception, right? So
Yep.
I mean, I would imagine so. It it was kind of stunning. Like if we weren't keeping track of the linebacker snaps week per week, which Tim always does, like we wouldn't have been aware that they were as close as they were because you're thinking that, well, like I was thinking, well, Jaden Osbury didn't get nearly as many snaps as everybody else, but he did.
Yeah, yeah. It was 40. An average of snaps would be Kaiser at 40 and KVA at 28 at the bottom of a five linebacker list. Not even four then.
Right.
That's
Between 25.
remarkable.
It is.
And Max Bola did do it on purpose. And I'm going to walk over my forthcoming, I shouldn't say when in the countdown, Madden for Amo. I started researching that one a little bit. Chuck Bulla, not Chuck Bulla, Max Bulla, noted, I don't play them because we feel like they deserve some time. He's like, we have all good players. Okay. I don't, here it is. I don't say, oh, this guy's got talent. We got to get him reps because he has talent. Our top guys all have talent. When you have to get to a position where you're comfortable with the defense, you're communicating, commanding the defense, you're not making mental errors, you're playing at the same level or higher than the other guys, there will be no exceptions made from this. You will then be meeting the standard to get on the football field. So basically, he's saying there might be four this time. There was five last time. I'm not forcing a fifth just because I had five last year.
They also, I mean, they blew a lot of people out last year, which
Yeah.
like makes this easier to do. I will be if I will be very interested to sort of see if this skews heavier towards Bowen and Viliama Asa moving forward. Because as this question notes, like it's more of a nickel game. Those are the two guys I would put on the field the most. And I would rotate a little bit less. But if you're blowing people out, like I get it, Osbury is good and Snead's got some traits too. There are some sub packages you can work those guys in there, but I would like to see the defense have a lot of 27 and a lot of 34 out there.
I think KVA starts. I mean,
I
I
do
think
too.
he's a starter. I don't know, man. Though I mean, we know that Osbury was trained in the nickel. We know what Snead. I mean, I think that everybody around Notre Dame feels like Snead, and we're about to see the best version of Jalen Snead. I don't think you can really go wrong, but I tend to agree with just your statement, Pete, that Bowen and Viliamuasa are the two that start and probably deserve the most reps, but the
I
other two are so capable that
I feel like meeting the standard Bull is looking for gives a pretty big advantage to KVA and Bowen.
Yes.
And I would put Osbury next on that. Um,
you use
KVA,
Snead.
I think if Kaiser wasn't on the team last year, KVA might have started quickly because you would just need his ability and talent.
Yeah.
Like Kaiser made everything easier for these guys. I'm not saying they're dropping off because now they've played 16 games of college football. We
Yep.
don't have to talk about Jack Kaiser being their leader anymore. But I feel like KVA, like it might have been like we need KVA on the field. He's too good. He's so smart. It wasn't just his athleticism. Remember we heard in the summer like, hey, how's he looking? They're like, oh, dude, you have no
Yeah, I
idea.
mean he was in the rotation before practice started July.
Yes, yeah, it's like Christian Gray changing a number. It's the most he just shows up and he's just automatic.
We have a question from Run for Fun 1122. Which opposing player was your favorite to watch play against the Irish? It could be because you admired their ability, they caused high drama and anxiety, or simply because they were a supervillain.
Supervillain got this question asked, guys. So go ahead off that one.
I
That's
mean,
great wording.
yeah, I mean, if you want to say that Reggie Bush was all the above, that's fine. He's the best player I've ever seen in person. Like, I get it. Jeremiah Love is great. If you saw Reggie Bush in person, that was a completely different level of athlete than anybody else on the field.
Bush should be up there. I mean, you guys know my favorite, and he is nowhere near as good as Reggie Bush, but my favorite because he was just a stone cold killer that I always wanted to have play for a team you root for was Robert Woods from USC. Just the
Mhm.
dude showed up, and remember, you guys remember when Slaughter went out in that 2011 game, and we're in
Yeah.
the press box. We weren't sitting next to each other back then. I was with Irish guys, but Low Wood goes out to replace him, and you're standing over Robert Woods, and Priester's like, Low Woods on Robert Woods. Low Woods on Robert Woods. Does he know what's going on out there? It was just the most obvious touchdown coming. I loved his approach. He scored a touchdown on the 2012 Irish. He's the one that scored for USC in that game. And then the other guy I just admired the most was Trevor Lawrence. It was awesome
Yeah,
against Notre Dame.
that was a reaction like when I saw Julian Love wasn't on the field.
It's Dante Vaughn.
Yep.
It's Dante Vaughn.
Dante Vaughn's on. It was the same thing. Dante Vaughn's in. Dante Vaughn's in. Well, I'm going to go to the Wayback Machine. Now, I didn't realize it when I was 7 years old, but I was in the stadium when O.J. Simpson scored 2 touchdowns against Notre Dame in
I
'67.
don't see that name coming on the pod today.
So I think that when he excelled when I was a little bit older and he was rushing for 2,000 yards in the NFL, I wasn't completely shocked by that. Anthony Davis going crazy against Notre Dame in the early '70s. Tony Dorsett ran for 300 yards against Notre Dame. 303 yards against Notre Dame.
One guy I think Emeka Ibuka would be
Oh,
really hot, would be on my list. I know he's not like flashy in terms of like his like physical measurables, but like God, that guy was just always
Uh,
open.
I mean,
the
he had over
steal
30. He had over 30 catches
the
against Notre
the
Dame.
Killed
steal
Notre
of the steal of the first round of the draft, Emeka
Yeah.
Egbuka. I mean,
I mean,
I,
it's
He
I
like
really hurt Notre Dame.
you know,
that was such a great example of like your passing game, like you need a really good number two. They just had a first round pick as their number two, and like Notre Dame really had a hard time dealing with it. That as everybody else did too.
how about John Lynch against Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium?
Yeah, making Bettis fumble a couple times is tough. That was a heck of a thing. Luke Kuechly was really fun to
Yeah,
watch
that's a good
against
call.
Notre Dame.
Point
Um,
of the trick play.
the trick play with Sear Wood, yeah, when he just ignored every aspect of it except for where the ball was going, and he ran by the flea flicker. That's he was awesome. I could have played with Manti. That might have made a bit longer of a tenure for Charlie Weiss if he had Manti in the league.
Touchdown Tommy Vardell. That's a name that pops into my head.
Yeah, I
He
didn't
had
like
four.
that guy
He
because I
had
was a little
four
kid
against
and that
Notre Dame.
bothered me. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was no good. When I was a little kid, Tim Priest, you're gonna like this one. I loved Anthony Carter from Michigan. I loved
Oh,
Anthony
geez.
Carter. Yeah.
That was a beautiful athlete.
Speaking of Michigan, John Ryan's revenge, was that the Michigan game? We know a summer enrollee comes in each season and seemingly makes early enrollment irrelevant simply because he's that damn good. But my contention this summer is that there are 5 guys enrolling in the summer that might be better than the entire collection that enrolled in the spring. Am I crazy, hopeful, or simply not objective because Notre Dame beat the pants off of Georgia? That's a great finish.
I I think it's a great question. I
It
hadn't
is.
even really thought about it, but then you look at we were naming these guys before we started recording. Dallas Golden, James Flanagan, Mark Zachary, Chris Burgess, who I'm really looking forward to seeing in Notre Dame uniform.
Speaking
Will
of the
Black,
weight day was 270, right?
yeah. Will Black, yeah. Like I want to see how does he carry that? What does that mean as
Yeah.
far as position? Um, it's a great question because I just named 5 guys. I guess those are probably the
I'm
five.
sure those are the 5. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there's no way that Dallas Golden's going to preserve a year of eligibility. He's too good of an athlete. He's going to be on the field, whether it's just special teams or not. I don't know. I think there's a strong feeling around the program that James Flanagan, 6'6", 237, is going to come in and play right away too. He's not going to preserve a year. Zachary, I don't know, smaller guy, but great quickness. Burgess probably preserves a year of eligibility because there just won't be a need.
They
And
need the
then
Tim Priester 8 games for Jim Kirk Burgess to preserve your eligibility, right?
it could,
4 in
yeah,
November and 4 in
something
the run.
something like that could happen. And Will Black, one of the many really talented tackles slash left tackles that will be in the program.
I think that John Ryan's revenge might be onto something here. I don't. Among the early enrollees, like Elijah Burst feels like a hit. I'm not sure I feel strongly about anybody
Mhm.
else yet. And maybe we can feel strongly about these 5 guys because we've never seen them in a Notre Dame uniform.
That's
It's
a
weird
fun
how
part of
that
it. It
weird how
really
that
is.
works.
That's the wild thing when we do our countdown during the summer. We've seen these freshmen that came in early in the spring, and we're just guessing about these other guys
Yeah.
based upon high school film that matters a lot, but then maybe doesn't.
I feel like Tim, I think I put this on the board because um, Zachary or Cree Thomas came up and everybody's like, I thought he looked really good in the spring, and we haven't seen Zachary and Golden. Cree Thomas like muddled the waters for Zachary and Golden. I'm
Mm.
just saying in our countdown too, but also on the field. But like he's already pretty good, so he's got a little bit of a leg up. But what if those guys are just that much better than he was going to be anyway? So it's almost like there's only one of them can play unless there's injuries that many minutes, right? Pull a Leonard Moore or something like that. So you're almost going. It's really hard to rank those guys, and as you will find out, people that read Irish Illustrated's countdown, they are kind of little more grouped together than I think they would have been if Cree Thomas did not enroll early and show well.
Yeah, I mean, of those 5, I think Golden and Flanagan definitely use a year of eligibility.
Yeah, and
Would you
Flanagan
agree with
walked into a
that?
situation without the other Flanagan that presents
That
opportunity
really,
knocks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that Flanagan references Flanagan. Well, we're going to be saying Flanagan with an A or Flanagan with an I.
Yeah. Our final question from J Herb 77, and I love this because it seems so insignificant, but maybe not. What is one completely insignificant thing about Notre Dame that drives you crazy? For example, my father is often infuriated by the inability to color coordinate in the stadium, a la Tennessee, Oklahoma, and most of the SEC. There are too many merchandise color options. That is a great insignificant thing to complain about. I applaud it.
Boy. Tim, you want to go first on this one?
I will
He
because
will. He's got some.
this was recently mentioned in
I'll
a
check back in 20
podcast.
minutes.
Well, I haven't. No, it'll be brief. It'll be brief by my standards. And we talked about this in a recent podcast, and somebody responded to it and said, "I disagree." Names on the back of the uniforms. I don't care. I don't care if fans want it. If it helps fans identify it easier, put names on the back of the uniforms. I get this one but it doesn't really. It isn't something that gnaws at me. The various colors of gold pants that Notre Dame has had through the years. It
Oh, the
just,
mustard. Yeah.
yeah, the mustard. I guess the mustard's a little bit offensive. I get that, but I don't give a damn. I don't care. I really don't. Some uniforms are better. Some green jerseys at Notre Dame are better than others. I get
Yes.
that.
Just like some quarterback numbers are better than others, Pete. Go ahead.
That's true. Yeah, the names on the jerseys, it doesn't bother me at all. Although you guys were talking about NIL and like the N does stand for name.
Yes, it does.
So
That's
there's something there. I don't, this is very inside baseball. I don't like how we're cordoned off in like one corner of the stadium like cows. For the final 5 minutes, like
totally pointless. Yes.
it's just like what are we? What's the point of this? Just to
We
do
got
it.
to keep track of them. We got to know where they
Yeah,
are at all
right. It's
times.
just like because I mean the way I like to cover like I get a ton of those last 5 minutes. Like there's a lot of good observation stuff that you're not
Yeah.
picking up on TV, which is like what I like to write about because if you already knew it, you don't need to read it. Yeah, that would be high on my list. Other than that, man, I don't know if there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Night games go on forever, but that's true that's home and
Yeah.
away.
That's home and away. That is home and away. I've come full circle on home night games too. Now that the kids are older, I don't have to worry about that as much.
But they're not waking you up in the morning.
Yeah, it's just fine now.
It does make a
That's
difference.
big difference. I mean, you guys know mine because I say it in the press box every single game at home. So I know I need
Oh, I know.
the
I
yelling
know.
into the mic to be part of the blue gold game only when kids are entertained
Oh,
by what's
You're
yeah.
going
talking
on.
about the in the stands reporter that
I need
is getting 6 year olds to say, what
Go
is
Irish
it?
to the band.
Stars hit a
not
band.
even it just it's the whole game. So that would be one of them. I don't care about the color thing either, but it's such a great complaint that it is funny that like Irish wear green. Do you have any green? Shouldn't you have green for God's sakes? Because you're a Notre Dame
Or
fan.
a night game green out. You can't. It's just dark.
Yeah, the Penn State whiteout is a little
The
cooler
Penn
than
State whiteout is, oh my God, that's just classic. Congratulations to them. They can't win a recruiting battle with Notre Dame, and they can't win an Orange Bowl against them. But you got the whiteout.
On that note, that's it for today. We'll be back with another podcast on Monday before taking a 1 week break for the 4th of July holiday. And I do want to point out, I'm not going to say Jack Freeman's pet peeve that I say before every home game because I don't know if he wants it on the air, but if he wants to, he can put it on the message board. You guys might remember that. I bring it up every single time. Until then, for Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, Pete Sampson, The Athletic, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for watching and listening our latest edition of Irish Illustrated Insider.